For more than 300 years, maps showed an island that officially existed. Sailors trusted it, governments printed it, navigators relied on it, and no one questioned it. Then modern satellites finally looked closer and found absolutely nothing. No land, no stjord, just endless ocean. This wasn't a myth or a rumor. The island appeared on official nautical charts again and again across different centuries. Entire generations of sailors believed it was real because people before them said it was real. Some even claimed they saw it with their own eyes. Ships reported land on the horizon, green shapes, coastlines, solid ground where the maps said it should be. But here's the problem. No one ever properly landed there. The island was always distant, always just out of reach. When GPS and satellite imaging became precise enough, scientists checked the exact coordinates. Same location, same spot, and what they found shocked everyone. The island wasn't damaged. It wasn't underwater. It simply wasn't there at all. From space, the ocean was perfectly flat and empty. No reefs, no landmass, nothing that could explain centuries of certainty. So how does an island exist on maps for hundreds of years and then completely vanish? The answer isn't aliens. It isn't secret cover-ups. It's something far more unsettling. Optical illusions, clouds on the horizon, underwater plateaus. Human error copied again and again until belief became fact. The island never sank. It never exploded. It was never destroyed. It only existed because humans believed it did. And once technology finally looked closely enough, belief disappeared. The island in question is called Sandy Island. And for 136 years, from 1876 to 2012, it appeared on maps of the South Pacific, right between Australia and New Caledonia. It was printed in atlases. It showed up on Google Maps as a black polygon. Nautical charts marked it clearly. Ships plotted courses around it. Governments recognized it. No one questioned it. Until 2012, when a team of Australian scientists decided to actually go there. Dr. Maria Seaton, a geologist from the University of Sydney, was leading a research expedition aboard the RV Southern Surveyor. They were studying plate tectonics in the Coral Sea, mapping the ocean floor, collecting data, and according to their charts, they were going to pass right by Sandy Island, a landmass roughly 24 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. Not a tiny rock, a substantial island. As they approached the coordinates where Sandy Island should be, the crew started watching the horizon. Islands that size are visible from miles away. You'd see the landmass, maybe some vegetation, birds circling overhead. But as they got closer, they saw nothing. Just flat, empty ocean. They checked their GPS. They were at exactly the right coordinates. 19 degrees, 13 minutes south, 159 degrees, 56 minutes east. This was the spot. According to every map they had, there should be an island here. A big island. But there was nothing. Dr. Seaton later described the moment. We want to check it out because the navigation charts on board the ship showed a water depth of 1,400 meters in that area. Very deep water. It's definitely deep ocean. It's definitely not an island. They sailed directly through the coordinates where Sandy Island was marked. The depth sounder showed 1,400 meters, nearly a mile of water beneath them. No underwater mountain, no submerged reef, no geological feature that could explain the island's supposed existence. Just empty ocean, dark and deep. The crew was baffled. How does an island that's been on maps for over a century just not exist? They started investigating. They looked at historical records, old charts, satellite imagery, everything they could find about Sandy Island's origin. And here's what they discovered. The island first appeared on maps after a whaling ship called the Velocity reported sighting land in this area in 1876. The captain marked it on his chart, called it Sandy Island, and that report made its way into official maritime records. Other ships and maps copied it. And once something appears on enough maps, it becomes confirmed through repetition, not through actual verification. Think about how map-making worked in the 1800s. There was no satellite imagery, no GPS, no way to verify coordinates with perfect accuracy. Navigation was done with sextants and chronometers, which could have errors of several miles. When a ship reported land, cartographers would add it to maps based on trust and approximation. If multiple ships reported land in roughly the same area, it reinforced the belief that the island existed. But here's the critical part. No one ever actually landed on Sandy Island. Ships reported seeing it on the horizon. They saw land, or what they thought was land, from a distance. But no one dropped anchor, went ashore, explored it, or brought back any physical evidence of its existence. Why? Because what they were seeing wasn't an island. It was an optical illusion. The ocean can play incredible tricks on human perception. There's a phenomenon called fata morgana, a complex form of superior mirage that occurs when layers of air at different temperatures bend light in unusual ways. This can make distant objects appear elevated, distorted, or create the illusion of land where there is none. Clouds on the horizon can look like coastlines. Underwater plateaus can create unusual wave patterns that resemble shallow water around an island. In the 1800s, sailors didn't know about these optical effects. If they saw what looked like land, they assumed it was land. They marked it on their charts, reported it to authorities, and moved on. And because ships traveling through that area would be looking for the island that was marked on their maps, they'd be primed to see it. A classic case of confirmation bias. Your brain sees what it expects to see. There's another possible explanation: pumice rafts. Volcanic eruptions can create massive floating islands of pumice stone, lightweight volcanic rock that floats on water. These pumice rafts can be hundreds of square kilometers in size, and from a distance, they look like solid land. They can persist for months or even years before breaking apart and sinking. It's possible that the crew of the Velocity in 1876 encountered a massive pumice raft and mistook it for a permanent island. Whatever the original sighting was, mirage, pumice raft, clouds, or simple navigation error, the mistake was immortalized on maps. And here's where it gets really interesting. Once Sandy Island appeared on official charts, it became nearly impossible to remove. Cartographers in the late 1800s and early 1900s copied from each other constantly. If a respected source showed an island, other map makers would include it too. No one wanted to be the map that was missing an island. Better to include something that might not exist than to omit something that does. And so Sandy Island spread. It appeared in French maritime charts, British atlases, American navigation guides. By the mid-1900s, it was on virtually every map of the South Pacific. Sailors navigating through the Coral Sea would plot courses that gave Sandy Island a wide berth, even though none of them ever saw it up close. But wait, did anyone notice? Didn't ships sailing through that area realize there was no island? Actually, yes. There were reports over the years of ships sailing through the coordinates and finding nothing. But these reports were dismissed or ignored. The island was on official charts, after all. If you sailed through and didn't see it, maybe you calculated your position wrong. Maybe you were slightly off course. Maybe visibility was poor. The existence of the island on maps was treated as more reliable than the direct observations of sailors who found nothing. This is a perfect example of how institutional inertia works. Once something becomes official knowledge, it's incredibly difficult to change, even in the face of contradicting evidence. The maps said the island existed, so the island existed. End of story. Fast forward to the age of satellite imagery. In the 1990s and 2000s, organizations like Google started creating detailed digital maps using satellite photos. When they mapped the South Pacific, they included Sandy Island based on existing charts. Google Maps showed it as a black polygon, indicating land that had been reported but not yet photographed by satellites. This was actually a red flag. If satellites couldn't photograph it, maybe it wasn't there. But the polygon remained. Some internet users noticed the weird black blob on Google Maps and started asking questions. Why couldn't satellites see this island clearly? Why was it just a black shape? Online forums debated whether it was a secret military base being censored, an uncharted wilderness, or a mapping error. But Google Maps is Google Maps. People trusted it. If Google showed an island, there must be an island. Then came the 2012 expedition. Dr. Maria Seaton and her team didn't set out to debunk Sandy Island. They were just doing geological research and happened to pass through the area. But when they found nothing but deep ocean, they knew they'd stumbled onto something significant. They documented everything: GPS coordinates, depth soundings, photographs of the empty ocean. They collected irrefutable proof that Sandy Island did not exist. When they returned and published their findings, it made international news. Major outlets ran headlines like "The Island That Didn't Exist" and "Google Maps Phantom Island." It was embarrassing for cartographers, maritime organizations, and tech companies. An island had been on maps for 136 years, and no one had bothered to actually verify its existence. Google quickly removed Sandy Island from Google Maps. Other mapping services followed. Nautical charts were updated. By the end of 2012, Sandy Island had been officially erased from existence, or rather, officially acknowledged to have never existed in the first place. But Sandy Island isn't alone. It's part of a long history of phantom islands, landmasses that appeared on maps for decades or centuries before being proven non-existent. Take the island of California, for example. For about 200 years, from the early 1600s to the late 1700s, maps showed California as an island separated from North America by a wide strait. Spanish explorers had sailed up the Gulf of California and assumed it connected to the Pacific on the other side, making California an island. It took nearly 2 centuries of exploration and remapping before cartographers accepted that California was, in fact, attached to the mainland. Or consider Bermeja, an island that appeared on maps of the Gulf of Mexico from the 1500s onward. It was supposed to be off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Mexican authorities cited it when claiming territorial waters and oil rights in the region. But when modern surveys try to locate Bermeja in the 1990s and 2000s, they found nothing. The island had vanished, or more likely, had never existed. Some conspiracy theorists claim it was destroyed to change maritime boundaries, but the simpler explanation is that it was never there to begin with. Then there's the Aurora's Islands, supposedly near the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic. Multiple ships reported sighting them in the late 1700s, and they appeared on maps throughout the 1800s. The Spanish government even sent an expedition to claim them, but the expedition found nothing, and subsequent searches also came up empty. The Aurora Islands gradually faded from maps, though some kept them well into the 1900s. And we can't forget Frisland, a phantom island that appeared on maps of the North Atlantic from the 1560s to the 1660s. It was supposedly a large island between Iceland and Greenland. Cartographers included it for a century based on the account of a single explorer whose entire voyage is now considered fictional or heavily embellished. Frisland never existed, but for 100 years, it was confidently printed on maps used by sailors crossing the Atlantic. What all these phantom islands have in common is that they represent the limits of human knowledge and the dangers of accepting information without verification. In an age before satellites and precise GPS, mapmaking was as much art as science. Cartographers had to make educated guesses based on incomplete, sometimes contradictory reports from explorers and sailors. Errors were inevitable, but once those errors made it onto authoritative maps, they became incredibly persistent. No one wanted to contradict established sources. No one wanted to remove an island that everyone knew existed. And so the errors were copied and repeated generation after generation until they became accepted facts. Sandy Island is a perfect case study in how this happens. A single sighting in 1876, possibly a mirage, possibly a pumice raft, possibly just a mistake, led to 136 years of cartographic fiction. Thousands of people believed in Sandy Island, not because they had evidence of its existence, but because it was on the map. The map was the reality. There's a philosophical question here about the nature of belief and truth. If everyone agrees that something exists, if it appears in official documents on trusted maps and authoritative sources, does it exist in some meaningful way, even if it's not physically real? Sandy Island existed in a social and institutional sense for over a century. It shaped navigation routes, influenced territorial claims, and occupied space in the collective imagination of sailors and cartographers. But physical reality doesn't care about consensus. The ocean where Sandy Island was marked is 1,400 meters deep and always has been. No amount of belief, no number of maps, no centuries of acceptance could make an island appear there. Eventually, reality wins. Technology advanced to the point where we could check definitively, and when we did, the island vanished like a ghost at sunrise. What's unsettling about the Sandy Island story is how long the error persisted. We're talking about 136 years, from the late 1800s through the early 2000s. This spans the era of steamships, diesel engines, radio communication, aviation, satellite technology, and the internet. At every stage of technological advancement, Sandy Island remained on the maps. No one checked. No one verified. Everyone just copied what came before. It makes you wonder, what else on our maps might not actually exist? What other known facts are just repeated errors that no one has bothered to verify? In an age where we trust GPS implicitly and assume our maps are perfectly accurate, Sandy Island is a reminder that even in 2012, we were still carrying forward mistakes from 1876. The good news is that technology is making phantom islands increasingly rare. Satellite imagery is incredibly precise. GPS positioning is accurate to within meters. Ocean floor mapping has surveyed huge swaths of the seabed. It's much harder for a non-existent island to hide in plain sight when we can literally photograph every square kilometer of the planet from space. But the human elements that created Sandy Island, confirmation bias, institutional inertia, trust and authority, the tendency to see what we expect to see, those haven't changed. We're still capable of believing in things that aren't real, especially when those beliefs are reinforced by trusted sources and repeated often enough. Sandy Island is gone now. It's been deleted from digital maps, removed from charts, erased from atlases. The Coral Sea at coordinates 19 degrees 13 minutes south, 159 degrees 56 minutes east is officially empty ocean, 1,400 meters deep, no land in sight. Ships pass through without deterring. Satellites photograph nothing but blue water. But in a way, Sandy Island still exists. It exists in history as a cautionary tale. It exists in the archives of old maps, where you can still see it marked confidently in ink. It exists in the story of how we knew something for 136 years that turned out to never be true. And maybe that's the real lesson of Sandy Island. It's not about the island, it never was. It's about us, about how we create certainty out of uncertainty, about how we mistake the map for the territory, about how we can believe, truly believe, in something that isn't there simply because we've been told it exists for long enough. The next time you look at a map, whether it's Google Maps on your phone or an atlas on your shelf, remember Sandy Island. Remember that maps are human creations, built from observations and reports and data that can be incomplete, misinterpreted, or just plain wrong. Remember that confidence isn't the same as accuracy. Remember that sometimes the most fundamental thing we know about the world, like the existence of an island, can turn out to be completely false. Sandy Island never existed, but for 136 years, everyone was absolutely certain that it did. And that's the scariest part of the whole story. The island that wasn't there is gone now. But the question it leaves behind remains. What else are we absolutely certain about that might turn out to be just as empty? Thanks for watching. And remember, just because something appears on a map doesn't mean it's real. Just because everyone believes something doesn't make it true. And just because knowledge is official, repeated, and centuries old doesn't mean it's accurate. Stay skeptical, verify your sources, and never stop questioning. Because somewhere out there, there might be another Sandy Island waiting to disappear.